morning, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you to our Platinum sponsors. We couldn't do this without them. Hey, Jeff Williams and Contrast, thank you for getting your checkbook out. Amazon and Aprio, thank you all for taking this conference seriously. You put money down, you become a Platinum sponsor. That means you're serious about investing in application security. I appreciate you. So this is going to be an extremely abridged take on application security. I'm going to stick to about 45 minutes or so in this talk. So my name is Jim Manico, and I'm one of your former board members of the Open Web Application Security Project. My blood bleeds blue. I really love this foundation, the staff, the work that we do as a community in application security. OWASP means something to me, and I'm glad you're all here. I'm the founder and CEO of my own firm, Manicode Security. I teach developers how to write secure code. It's something I love to do, and I spend a lot of my time volunteering for OWASP as a lead of the ASVS standard, the cheat sheet series, a couple Java utility projects, and the proactive controls. I try my best to donate my knowledge back to the foundation to help push application security forward. But where did we start? Where did application security start? And it's debatable, but in my world, I look at the 1967 task force in the US federal government doing the first classified study, asking the question, hey, we're starting to build a lot of software systems here. How are we doing? How is the security of software that's beginning to run the infrastructure of the United States, right? And how do you think that report went? It was done in 1967. It was published as a private report in 1970, and we all got to look at it in 75 when it got declassified. What do you think this report, this first major security audit of a major government, what do you think this report said?
It's Fort Knox.
What's that? No, it said that bleep is messed up, my friend. It's the opposite of that. It's bad. And the report basically said, we don't have security in software. It's that bad. So this is where we begin. And the reason I want to start here is because I know a lot of you in the jobs that you're doing. Is anybody here a little stressed out, frustrated, or burdened from the job that they do in application security? Come on, seriously. So there is a lot of massive stress and a feeling of frustration that we're not moving forward, especially when you're zoomed into your job, sitting there reviewing like 500 fighting pen test report or security scan, and you're triaging it going, what am I doing with my life? Let's zoom out. Whoa. Let's zoom out a bit. Let's look at the last 50 years, and I want to show you a different perspective. The real first security testing tool that I can find in history is 1938. This is now like Polish researchers, and it wasn't the English who were able to crack Enigma. It was actually a Polish researcher who did that original research that the various English researchers took over and expanded to help crack Enigma. Now, this testing tool, the bomb, what was it? It was a cipher cracking tool to crack early encryption. Do you know how the bomb was built back in 38? It was built with the hammer and nail and wire. It was a physical device that was constructed that was used to crack ciphers that helped the Allies win World War II. That single security testing tool changed history like nothing else. And again, hammer, nails, wire, wood is what that tool was made out of. That's where we started. Now, there's a big gap in security testing. About 1965, what's going on in 65? William Matthews finds a security bug in Multic CTSS. And we're going to come back to that. There's a couple interesting findings around Multic CTSS. This is a really early time-sharing server at MIT. So we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. 1972, a really famous security report, the Anderson report, is published around the same time as these other federal reports, and they're all saying the same thing. We just don't have security in modern software that's running the country. So in 74, the Air Force starts doing real testing. In 79, Lint is published, the first early static analysis tool. It does barely any security at all, but it's the early tech that drives static analysis, which is the heart of our industry right now. If you're not doing static analysis, you're negligent. Come on, run some static analysis, people. 1995, we have the Security Administrator Tool for Analyzing Networks. This gets released, and this is epic. This is the first time a real combat testing tool against Windows is available to everyone. I remember this coming out, we're downloading it, and we could suddenly own everything overnight. And this really leveled the playing field in terms of our ability to hack modern systems as a security industry. We all were playing with this, and it was epic. So 1998, Christmas Day, Crack Magazine 54, Rainforest Puppy, Jeff Forrestal, coins the term SQL injection for the first time, one of the biggest vulnerabilities within our industry. From that point on, for the next 20 years, SQL injection is the #1 way we're attacking websites or assessing websites, depending on what your perspective is. 1999, Microsoft coins the term cross-site scripting for the first time. This is not that long ago. And like in 2001, we see WebGo coming out, Metasploit's released, SQL Map gets released in 2006. At this point, all of us who are testers or hackers have a mature tool suite to assess the security of web software. And just a few years before that, we were barely getting started. Look, back in '99, we see Gary McGraw, John Viega, and Brad Arkin forming the first code review team for security. They're working at Visa and all these big companies who write a lot of code where security matters. So that industry, security, who's doing security code review as part of their work now in some way? Like most of us in the room. That only started back in '99 where McGraw started selling code scanning services. Loft and a few others were doing it too, but this didn't start that long ago. And then we're like 25 years past where it's a relatively mature industry. So WebGoat's coming out. Now we have this common website that we're all talking about how to hack certain features. That accelerated the conversation of web security testing like nothing else I saw in that era. Metasploit came out. I could pop any major corporation by hitting one button. Go hack this corporation, Metasploit. Wonderful tool to come out. I had a CISO at a meeting once tell me, this is not right. Anyone can grab Metasploit and easily own my whole corporation. And I'm like, I have an idea. Maybe you should hire someone to run that tool and do it for you and then fix those things. He's like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work, buddy, it is. So what else? So DevOps. Who's doing DevOps? Who's like, oh yeah, DevOps. Like everyone, well, most in the room are interacting with DevOps in some way, right? That only really started in 2009 at Etsy. This is Zane Lackey and Nick Galbraith doing the first major DevOps program where they're now like every developer's checking in PHP code, checking in PHP code, right? And they're going through a whole battery of security testing as early as 2009. That's when DevOps really starts, in my opinion. 2010 is where SPDX comes out, the first real SBOM. Now everyone's SBOMing this, SBOMing that. By the way, you get an SBOM, that's great. You gotta actually update your freaking libraries before you actually do security. Running an SBOM gives you zero security. Go update your libraries, then we'll talk. All right, moving on. 2013, Defect Dojo begins with a local Austin professional. This is an individual, Dave Anderson, who builds out an entire orchestration framework from scratch. He's a professional developer. So we plug in all the open source scanning tools of the day. You have the whole orchestration framework. It's open sourced at OWASP back in 2013. And we just passed 10 million downloads of this little OWASP project. That's serious downloads at this point. So now we're at OWASP pushing out free infrastructure software to handle DevOps workflows. That was 2013 when this came out, not that long ago. What else do we got here? A few more things. We have 2015 dependency check. This is Jeremy Long at Wells Fargo, one of the software composition analysis vendors, who I'm not gonna mention their name in public at least, went into Jeremy's office and quoted them some astronomical number for their tool, like $5 million. Well, you're a bank, you can afford it. He's like, I know your pricing. You are like tripling your price because I'm a bank. That's not right. And they're like, come on, you can afford it. He's like, get out of my office. And he kicked him out of the building. As this vendor was leaving, they were like, go ahead, Jeremy. Go build it yourself. Good luck, buddy. Guess what Jeremy started doing the next day? He built the OWASP dependency check tool, which the same vendor wrote about saying, oh, you shouldn't use that because we're better, we're commercial. They actually had to counter his product, open source, I love this story. So Jeremy is a warrior. He's up every morning at 5 o'clock with this vendor behind him saying, go ahead, Jeremy, build it yourself. He's like, yeah, I'll build it myself. And he did. Every morning, 5 a.m., cranking this out. It's now one of our flagship projects, a real-world tool to do software composition analysis, which every vendor in this space looks at like, oh yeah, we do something better than that. It's a good baseline for this very important part of our industry. 2020, this is like, for me, this is where the modern testing world ends. And we're now past 2020, we're hitting next generation stuff. 2020, we see the threat modeling manifesto announcing to the world that this process, this design review process matters for software in an extremely big way. Up until that point, I would always talk trash about threat modeling. I don't like sitting in a room talking about theoretical BS. But it's matured so much in the last year. When I read the manifesto, that's what changed my mind personally, that threat modeling does matter in our industry. I digress. So where are we today? Security testing is natively integrated into GitHub, the repo of the world. DevOps is the norm with static analysis, dynamic analysis, software composition analysis, and this IS new category thing. Sorry, just kidding. Contrast, just kidding. DevSecOps is now becoming the norm quickly. Now, pen test activities are still expensive. There's not enough people out there. So those of us who are AppSec professionals, we have our choice of where to work today. So keep that in mind. You're doing application security. I don't mean to say it. There's something that your mom may have told you that you really shouldn't hear. It's not too good for your psychology. But those of you doing AppSec, you are special. You are very special. You have your pick of the litter of where you could work today because we are in the highest demand of almost any industry in the world right now. So pick well. Make sure you're happy. Make sure you're finding a place where you're getting what you want because for whatever reason, you're in this industry, you're an AppSec pro, and you are one of the rock stars of the world right now because we need so many of you, so much more of you to accomplish our goal of managing the world's security software. So something interesting. OWASP, the OWASP testing guide is now being used by compliance by some of the world's largest software companies. I don't know if you know about this project. This is the OWASP Mobile Testing Security Guide. This is amazing how well they've taken our previous projects and matured it into a really cutting-edge guide. Also, the Mobile Application Security Verification Standard, it's run by a different team than the main security standard. They are surgical with every single word and every single requirement. I think it's useful. This is why some of the largest software companies in the world have picked up the mobile ASVS as their standard when they're talking to regulators. So anyone want to say, oh, OWASP, are they really influencing the world? You better believe it. Let me say this again. Some of the world's largest software developers have approached the ASVS teams and want to use our standard for their standard for software development when it comes to security so they can convince regulators to get off their butt and leave them alone, that they're following a neutral standard. That's how OWASP is influencing the world when it comes to security testing today. So let's do another history. How much time do I have, conference leaders? Time check. How am I doing?
9:24.
I have no idea what that means.
24 minutes in.
Okay, that's great. Let's talk about the history of something technical. Let's talk about HTTPS. Let's talk about passwords, and I'll get out of here. So HTTPS. It starts back in 1994, where Netscape creates the initial version of HTTPS. Does anybody know the story of how this was built? Moxie Marlinspike of Signal did a very famous talk on the original engineers who built HTTPS. So they built the original protocol, right? Combination of symmetric and asymmetric crypto in transit put together. Boom, we have HTTPS. What was this certificate? Why do we need a certificate of authority in HTTPS? All right, something technical. Why do we need a certificate authority for HTTPS? Anybody? What's that? Come on.
Neutral third party.
But why? What do they do? What do they do for us? They validate the identity of the public certificate of the server delivering HTTPS services is one explanation of what that's about. Now, you know how this got created? The engineer who wrote the original version of SSL, he was like, oh yeah, that public key, that initial public key, that could be hijacked by an attacker. So he built a certificate authority system as a hand wave. Yeah, I didn't realize it was gonna be so important. I kind of just like threw it together. At the end of the protocol, a couple sentences, yeah, you gotta validate that public key. So the entire certificate authority system that runs the PKI of the world today was built as a hand wave by an engineer, and it shows. Sorry, no offense. No offense, it shows. It shows, right? Okay, let me go. So 1999, we got TLS 1.0. It was super complicated. They're like, okay, let's take every possible thing we can do in a transport protocol and throw it into TLS 1. It's too complicated. It ended up being crap. But in 99, it was an outstanding improvement from the dumpster fire that was SSL 3.0. But 2006, 2008, now we see some really good stuff. 2006, TLS 1.1 comes out. It's problematic, but a lot better. TLS 1.2 comes out. It's complicated, right? I know a lot of your Facebook status, relationship status, what is it? Complicated. I know, it's okay. It's okay. TLS 1.2, it's super complicated, but it's doing a lot right. Now, I don't run it on my server anymore. We're gonna talk a little bit more about TLS 1.3, but 2009, this researcher, Ivan Ristic, anyone know Ivan Ristic? He's a madman. Why I like Ivan Ristic is he's one of the people in our industry who looks at a standard and says, I want to understand this protocol at the bit level like I was a machine. And he's not kidding around. And that kind of intellect, that kind of desire to understand application security at the bit level is what his brain put into SSL Labs. Now, Ivan doesn't work for Qualys anymore, but what he wrote in SSL Labs is still today the de facto standard of how we measure the TLS web services and websites around the world. So I watch Ivan's career. He built his own product, Hardnize, and just whatever he does, I'm very impressed with. I'm not saying this because I'm affiliated with him in any way. I'm saying this because I want to highlight someone who changed the world of TLS. I remember when he pushed out SSL Labs in 2009. Now, when I was younger, I was a little more troublesome, we'll say, maybe. So I went onto Twitter and I tweeted out the SSL Labs URL of every major AppSec company and their grade. Like Cigital, John Stephen, wherever you are, F. And Aspect Security was not an A. So all these big companies with very bad TLS scores because a public engine just came out. So a bunch of folks from Cigital, who are now my friends, good friends of mine, start tweeting well, this is not Manico, this is not right. He's just playing games. These grades don't actually matter. And they start attacking me because I was sending out TLS links. So this is getting Twitter drama. Oh, my favorite. Twitter application security drama, my favorite. So Ivan jumps in and says one thing, and he's like, all you companies giving Mr. Manico a hard time, I got a suggestion for you. Go fix your server and leave Jim alone. Yeah, thank you, Ivan. Thank you. Anyways, so SSL Labs was fun because it leveled the playing field. We can now look at each other's website with an extremely mature engine to see how well we've all tuned HTTPS. And that radically started this exponential growth of getting TLS and HTTPS right. And now we hit the modern era. 2010, Chrome starts preloading some sites with strict transport security and starts catching a lot of big governments doing spying around the world. Oh yes, so when Chrome starts to preload, they can detect different kinds of interception. Firesheep comes out in this era. Anyone play with Firesheep or remember that? Overnight, I'm able to hijack anyone's Gmail and Facebook account at a coffee shop without any kind of real work. This was available, 13 years ago. I could, in a trivial way, hijack people's account at a coffee shop. This is how far we've come. That's a decade ago. How are we doing today? We're about to see. Today is a much different story. 2011, forward secrecy goes live. And again, this is anti-spying kind of transport security. 2013, TLS 1.2, it's complicated, like your relationship status. It's live in modern browsers. It's live everywhere and very quickly becomes the more prominent protocol. 2015, Let's Encrypt shows up And getting a good, well-managed TLS cert becomes free for everybody. And by 2016, half of the web is HTTPS. By 2017, like certificate authority authorization, certificate authority authentication, one of those auths, that goes live. So this is a real public record of everybody registering sites to make sure that terrible authority system is doing a better job, or we at least have visibility into when that system screws up, which it does a lot. In 2018, Let's Encrypt goes wild card. That's epic. TLS 1.3 is now live in Firefox and Chrome as early as 2018. And why is TLS 1.3 revolutionary? It is. This is such an amazing improvement of this critical protocol to our industry. So why does TLS 1.3 change everything? Because we're simplifying it in a radical way. We see that the configuration options drop to almost nothing. The number of ciphers it supports is very low. And this is one of the most epic transport security protocols in modern history. It's becoming the default across all of our services, and it's working. It's not just working, it's working extremely well. And not just that, I swear, I actually shed a tear when I heard about this. In 2021, first of all, the PKI consortium was formed from the ashes of the CAS-SEEK consortium. This is a secret browser cabal that would decide who was going to be the authorities of this current era for all the browsers. That got turned into a formal consortium recently, and right about that time, Chrome 91 now defaults everything to HTTPS, and that changes everything. Now when your mom, your grandma, your sister, when she goes and punches in a website, that defaults to HTTPS. In fact, around the same era, Safari, when you punch in an HTTP link, they'll check to see if HTTPS is live first and go there instead. So where have we come? In a matter of like 94, 2000, a matter of like less than 30 years, we went from having the authority system being a hand wave and a couple scratches of notes on an engineer's standard to being one of the most rigorous authorities, as well as one of the most rigorous transport security protocols that drives the secure web today. And it works. It doesn't just work, it works well. And it took hundreds of brainiacs at the protocol level and similar to get us to where we are today. So again, I want to go back and say, sometimes your job is difficult and you're stressed out and you're triaging a report and it doesn't feel like you're making any progress. I ask you to zoom out. Think of this story where we go from this crap protocol that's a hand wave to this protocol that is now something that can defend the world from introspection and what is it, confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. We can provide that now across the world in a robust way in all of our services today. And that was not the case just a couple decades ago. That's where we've come. We've come a long way, baby, is what I'm trying to say. Time check. How much time do I got? Do we got time for one more of these historic? We got this. So Chrome 90 and 91 defaults to HTTPS. And this is where the previous era of transport security ends and the modern era begins. Because the era we're in, we're going to see 100% of the web be HTTPS, and we're going to see HTTP go away in a very short amount of time. So here's stats from this month, right? 96% of all pages loaded by Chrome on Mac OS is HTTPS. And if you take a look back to March 15, same era, 2015, 43% not too long ago. How far have we come in a short time? It amazes me when I think about the history of what we're doing in this industry. And I got to practice what I preach. Here's SSL Labs today. Yeah, I got TLS 1.3. I got strict transport security preloaded. I got CAA all configured, and I hope you do as well. Check your website, fix your configuration, right? Let's move on. One more, password history. So 1961, this is password and password storage history. We go back to Ferdinando Carbato. He's a project leader and a brilliant leader and a super sharp. He's one of those guys who drinks 4 cups of coffee in the morning, super energetic, running 4 or 5 teams, and he's building MIT CTSS from scratch. The first multi-user, robust computer in the planet. And he's leading this team. Now, what he didn't realize is he is the first engineer in the world to design a password system. He's got a master file with the passwords in it that you need to verify against during login. And his team, as they built this, they're like, certainly other people have thought of this. Well, Fernando, no one had. You're the first engineer to come up with the password strategy. Again, that's MIT's CTSS. In 1961, we see the first password system built to defend software. Now, you tell me, what's next in this historical view of passwords? What's next? Someone builds a first password system. What does the next person do? They hack it, right? So I'm going to give, now there's another professor in 65 who found a bug. That story's not nearly as fun. So I'm going to boot him from history, even though he belongs in the pole position. I'm going to give Alan Scher some cred here. So he's a PhD student, and he knew how to get, he was already given privileged access because he was a researcher working on this operating system. So he had root access, and everybody wanted access to this computer. It's a brilliant, high-end computer of the era. So because he was a root user as one of the researchers, he would give himself a lot of extra time by modifying the operating system code. He was root access. But he would actually delete the time he was using from the timeshare so he can use it whenever he wanted to. And for years, this researcher is hacking the machine. Well, not really. He had root access. He's taking advantage of his root access to literally modify the OS so they wouldn't see the time he was using so he can use more time than every other PhD student. This is not very ethical, by the way. He did it. Yeah, he did it. And he finished the research project at MIT, and they removed admin access from him. And he's like, I need my admin access back. What he realizes is the print, and this guy's been looking at the code for years now to maintain his own access. So how does he break in? He figures out that the mastered password file with the right command is printable. So he prints out the mastered password list, and he has the passwords of the whole system. So that's what privilege escalation, an unprotected file, when he was not a root user, he could print out, and he becomes the first password hacker in history to get more time on his machine to get his PhD. High five, Alan Scher. You are a part of history. Now, 1970 is when a real password protection algorithm comes out. This is Crypt3. Now, this is released in Unix, but they grabbed this from the old M209 code from World War II. This was in Unix up to the 6th edition. Just for the record, this is correct cryptography, but it was the beginning of modern password storage. It came from this physical device that was used by the Allies in World War II to protect our military communication, right? Now, 1978, Crypt is now based off of DES, the 7th edition. But even though this is a bad algorithm by today's standards, we see for the first time password stretching, password salting, and a real password policy enforced at the crypto level. This is a great start. We jump ahead in history to the 80s, and we see that Unix is finally limiting password database to root users only. So a nod to Alan Scher. You're printing out root level password, you're printing out what should be root level password files from a multi-user machine in 66, and we didn't really get around to fixing that until the 80s. High five to you, Alan Scher, wherever you are. 1991, MD5 comes out. Why should I bring up MD5 in password storage history? We shouldn't, because you shouldn't be using MD5 for password storage, damn it. But we spent a decade doing this to our own chagrin. I still see systems from major companies implementing password storage with MD5 from scratch, and it hurts me. It does, it hurts me. 1994, Crypt3 is increasing its iteration count. It has a now 48-bit size salt to deduplicate passwords in storage when they're the same. We're getting good here. And 97, Loft Crack comes out. This is epic, right? Loft Crack lets us pop Windows passwords pretty easily, and it's the first cracking tool that does dictionary attacks, that does brute force attacks, hybrid attacks, and rainbow tables all in one tool. Today's tool is Hashcat. Hashcat does all of this and more. It's one of the most amazing password cracking software programs on the planet, but Hashcat came from the work of LoftCrack, which started the password cracking industry, in my opinion. Now, 99, we have the first of the good password storage algorithms coming out, Bcrypt. Bcrypt today at a work factor 10 is still a reasonable algorithm, and it came out decades ago. In 2000, we got PBKDF2. If you look at the OWASP password storage cheat sheet, if you're building a FIPS compliant system, we give you exact advice on how to use this algorithm, also good today for US federal systems. In 2007, PHP has a built-in password protection algorithm using Bcrypt if it's available, and by 2009, Percival publishes scrypt. In 2015, Argon 2, we want to use 2ID today, wins the password hashing competition. And these algorithms have stood the test of time and are still good today. 2016 is a famous day in password protection history. Dr. Akue from Dropbox, brilliant architect. He publishes this article which in detail explains the crypto that they're using at Dropbox to protect their password. This takes some cojones to literally describe your protection strategy to the world. And among my fellow instructors, we refer to this as the canonical way to store a password for about a decade. I wouldn't use Bcrypt anymore, though. I don't think. Its 72-byte limit is a deal breaker for me. We'll just pre-hash. Then I have byte problems. We'll just base 64 in code, then pre-hash, then use Bcrypt. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm going to use something else at this point. But he publishes an article that gives us a really good formula at using one of the most common available algorithms, and it changes the world of password storage from that point on. 2019 is the end of modern password history. Argon 2ID in PHP 7.3 is now natively supported. There's no excuse. In the world's most popular web-based language, it now supports the world's best cryptographic algorithm for password storage. And this, my friends, is where we've come in less than 50 years. We went from text files of passwords being printed by PhD students to the world's most common language offering a really high-end adaptive algorithm for password storage, Argon 2ID. This is the famous article from Dr. Devdatta Akue that drove the modern password storage industry, and Argon 2ID is now supported everywhere. And the cheat sheet at OWASP, the cheat sheet series, one of your flagship projects, we brought in a mathematician to help us very surgically give you advice. So we suggest if you care more about CPU and you want to minimize your CPU, use 37 megs of memory, 1 degree of parallelism, and 1 iteration count. If you're more concerned about RAM usage, then use 15 megs of memory, 2 iteration counts, and 1 degree of parallelism. Read more about this at the OWASP password storage cheat sheet. That's where we've come. Text files that can be printed out to very surgical advice at the standard body level on how to protect passwords for systems you're building. We've come a long way in a very short amount of time. I'm out of time here. I'm really proud of all the OWASP projects we've seen throughout history. These have changed my life as a professional. They've changed the life of my customers, and we've done a great job helping the world secure their software infrastructure. I'm proud of the work that you've all done, the work that we've all done. The flagship projects in our foundation, it matters. It helps people. One of the 3 designations for a charity in our country is that you're doing education. And that's what we do. We've taught thousands and thousands of developers and other professionals around the world how to do application security for free to help make the world a more secure place. And I do believe in this. The history of XSS is also fascinating. I'm going to say one thing. Robert Hansen, Robert Hansen in 2004, he proposed the content restriction standard in 2004 that became content security policy in 2012. I don't think a lot of people know this history. This is one of the most important standards to block cross-site scripting. It works well. This all came from a local Austin boy named Robert Hansen, who's like our snake, one of the original hackers in our industry. So wherever you are, Robert Hansen, every time I think of content security policy, I think of you. I think history forgets where this standard came from. I don't, and I appreciate you. Also, trusted types from Chris Christoph is changing the world. We have DOM Purify, a focal point library in XSS Defense is becoming a W3C standard. It's so critical. AppSec is now global. We have 230 chapters around the world where geeks and nerds like us get together and talk about how they can make the world a more secure place. And the work we do matters. You know, when I came to Austin last night, I'm doing a little plant-based eating, so I went right to a vegan place. Is that okay, Austin? Is that okay? I'm sorry. So I had some nice, delicious charred cauliflower at True Kitchen. That's how I started my night last night. Then I went to Pete's Dueling Pianos with the close friend. Get some piano action. It's now about 11 o'clock, and there's a voice inside of me saying, "You're in Austin. It's 11. You got a keynote in 10 hours. Go back to your room and get to sleep. Get some rest." And be ready for tomorrow. And what do you do to that voice? You shove voodoo donuts into that voice, and then you go get a tattoo at like 2 in the morning before you give a keynote. Go Austin! All right. Sorry. All right, I'm about done here, everyone. So people ask me all the time, what's the future of AppSec? Where are we going from here? I'm like, I don't know. Ancient aliens are stealing time. I don't know. I don't know the future. I know my future, but I don't know the future of our industry, right? So I'm going to tell you this. This is the best I got for you. You know what the future is of application security? Well, that's you. That's the work that you're doing. That's the 500-item report that you're triaging for developers. That's the grind that you're doing now. That's the volunteerism that you're doing with OWASP. That's you being here at this conference to learn. And I'm just grateful you're all here. Let's get this party started. Let's go LASCON. Have a great conference. Thank you for being here. I'm done.